guys, welcome to Better Bachelor. My name is Joker with a face for radio and a voice for print. I did a video, several months ago when Coach Red Pill had been arrested by the SBU. He was detained for a couple of weeks. They didn't really find much on him from my understanding. And so they released him on his own recognizance. And he said, hey, you know what? They're going to come after me at some point. So I'm going to try to get out of the country. And as he crossed over the border, they arrested him and put him in jail. And apparently he got pneumonia and now he's dead. So Coach Red Pill is dead at 55, at least according to his father and some other news agencies. So we're going to talk about that very quickly. I interviewed him back in March of last year. As a matter of fact, you can see here. I've got an interview where I interviewed him March 18th of 2023, just about the time that he had been arrested. And, there were certain things he could talk about and certain things he couldn't talk about. But it was about a 2-hour-long interview. And, of course, the media came out and said, he was selling, Russian military positions, selling Ukrainian military positions of their troops and this other stuff. And it's kind of like, okay, a journalist, Lira, a journalist who's a married guy with kids and that was living in Kharkov at the time. Yeah, he's going to have all these military secrets to sell to the Russians. So, there was a lot of propaganda surrounding it. But apparently, he's gone ahead and passed. I thought I'd pass this along. A lot of you guys probably already knew it. I didn't really know Coach very well, but I will say that when I wanted to find, when I was kind of first into Red Pill content, watching it long before I ever made it, but when I was watching it, I did a search for Red Pill on YouTube, and Coach was one of the first ones that I found. And Gonzalo, he was a little haughty, a little holier than thou attitude. But he also had some good advice, and I found him quite interesting. The reason I had even found him in the first place is because I was searching for Red Pill, the movie. And when I typed in Red Pill into the YouTube search, he was one of the names that popped up. And I watched a little bit of his content. And then, of course, he got demonetized and had a hard time on YouTube for a while. So yesterday I saw this from Tucker Carlson. Gonzalo Lira says his son has died at the age of 55 in the Ukrainian prison, where he was being held for the crime of criticizing the Zelensky and Biden governments. Gonzalo Lira was an American citizen, but the Biden administration clearly supported his imprisonment and torture. Several weeks ago, we spoke to his father, who predicted his son would be ended, and he has his portions of this interview down below. If you look in the community notes, which I am why they let me decide or help decide community notes, I don't know. Apparently Twitter doesn't know me that well. But if you look through the community notes, there's a lot of community notes that said, he was arrested because he's giving away APU positions of the Ukrainians, that he was selling secrets, that he was doing all these things against the Ukrainian government. And if you think to yourself, like, well, how would he know military positions of Ukrainians? Like, he was in downtown Kharkov or Kharkiv, I forget how they pronounce it. He was in downtown just being a journalist, sitting at home, smoking cigarettes and reading material and doing his videos like he normally does. A lot of the slander against him didn't hold up. And if you remember, Biden was very quick to spring Brittany Griner, who had illicit substances in Russia. He was very quick to spring her out of jail. But when questioned directly, the secretary, I don't know if it was the Secretary of State, I don't know who was asked, I don't remember now, but somebody was asked by a reporter, like, hey, what are we doing for Gonzalo Lira? And the U.S. government's just kind of like, whatever. And, of course, they did nothing because he was speaking out about money laundering and other things that he was accusing. Really? Hey, just wait till I'm done recording. You always drink while I'm, sorry. he was blaming this administration of money laundering and other things, and of course, probably would have spoken out against that if he actually knew anything. I don't think he knew anything for sure, but he had his opinions about it. And when you're in Ukraine and you're speaking poorly of Ukraine and the United States government, where this supposed money laundering is happening, and then they say, hey, we want you to shut up, and you happen to get arrested and be imprisoned and then catch pneumonia, and natural causes, nothing we could do there. I'm sure they were quite happy to have him go away. But this is from the Grayzone, and I apologize for any background noise. I have two dogs that have now decided that it's time to play while I record my videos. From the Grayzone, American citizen Gonzalo Lira dies from neglect in a Ukrainian prison. A prominent commentator on the Russia-Ukraine war was imprisoned in Ukraine for speech critical of the country's government. He's died after weeks of medical neglect by Ukrainian authorities. Let me zoom this up a little bit so you guys can read at home if you'd like to. Chilean-American war commentator Gonzalo Lira died shortly before noon on January 11th, 2024, at a hospital in Kharkiv, where he had been imprisoned for 8 months since he was accused of justifying Russian war efforts in Ukraine. Lira came to prominence in 2022 when he emerged as a critical voice in an increasingly dictatorial Ukraine. His arrest in May 2023 on charges of production and dissemination of materials justifying Russia's armed aggression against Ukraine helped to galvanize domestic oppression to U.S. funds for the war and led to calls for his release by tech baron Elon Musk and American political commentator Tucker Carlson. Now, they say here that he was arrested in May of 2023, and my interview with him was March, so that must have been, I think that was after his arrest. They held him for a week or so, I think, and then released him. And then they came back for him and threw him into the clink for good. So I think my interview was between those two periods with him. A note written by Lira and provided by his father to the Grayzone indicated his death came at a nearly 3-month battle with pneumonia, a condition which was apparently ignored by his Ukrainian jailers until just weeks before his death. Lira's death was revealed by his father, Gonzalo Lira Sr., who had spent weeks pleading with the American embassy to intervene in his son's medical emergency. Emails reviewed by the Grayzone show that after learning of his son's illness, the senior Lira urged the embassy to intervene on January 3rd. In a message to U.S. officials, he noted that Ukrainian authorities appeared to make an effort to conceal information about Lira Jr.'s health from his family and legal representatives. The medical warden in the pretrial jail in Kharkiv is not giving information to the state of his health, he wrote, concluding, "It has been 12 days since I knew his state." One thing that I think is important to note here is many people are critical, myself as well, of saying to him, hey, you probably don't want to speak out against the Ukrainians while you're in Ukraine. You know, you're sending these videos out that are critical, and Ukraine is known for being very corrupt. Not my opinion. It's been in newspapers and articles right up until the Biden administration decided to get in bed with Ukraine. But before that, if you go back and look at news articles, even from very left-leaning news writers, in 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, they were very critical of Ukraine being a very dirty, corrupt country. So this isn't like anything new. But him calling it out while he's in Ukraine, not so smart. And it's very unfortunate that he decided to do so. Or he should have left first, then reported on what he felt was going on and what. But you know, everybody makes decisions, and well, he made his as well. The other thing I think that is kind of interesting about this whole thing is that supposedly Ukraine and the United States, we're just like this, and we're best buddies, and we're going to go out there and fight Russia and handle all these problems. But the United States did absolutely nothing for an American citizen in Ukraine. You'd think if we were just such good allies and everything was going along well, there would be no problem to get him returned home. But mum is the word. So basically, in Ukraine, it is okay to end an American citizen, and the Biden administration doesn't seem to care. So that is that. They say from the Grayzone, U.S. citizen Gonzalo Lira faces a long prison term in Ukraine for criticizing Kyiv and its war effort. Shunned by the U.S. State Department, his father's fighting to stop the slow ending of his son. The following day, Lira Jr. was finally brought to the hospital, allowed to see his lawyer. The defense attorney left the meeting with a handwritten note from Lira explaining the situation, which is believed to be his final written correspondence. The letter reads, "I've had double pneumonia, both lungs, as well as pneumothorax, and a very severe case of edema, swelling of the body. All this started mid-October, but it was ignored by the prison. They only admitted I had pneumonia at a December 22nd hearing. I'm about to have a procedure to reduce the edema pressure in my lungs, which is causing me extreme shortness of breath to the point of passing out after minimal activity or even just talking for 2 minutes." Unconvinced that his son would receive proper medical care in Ukrainian hospital, Gonzalo Lira Sr. continued to plead with the embassy to monitor the situation. The next day, he wrote them again, "I need the embassy to keep close touch while he's in the hospital to ensure his health is progressing while in the hospital. You should also contact a doctor in charge of Gonzalo while in the hospital to verify his recuperation." But his efforts proved fruitless. A week later, Lira Sr. wrote worst fears were confirmed when he received word that his son had died. He now blames Washington and Kyiv for his death. He said, "I cannot accept the way my son has died. He was all the bad things that happened to him. He was extorted incommunicado for 8 months and 11 days, and the U.S. Embassy did nothing to help my son," Lira Sr. stated in an email announcing the news. "The responsibility of this tragedy is with the dictator Zelensky, with the concurrence of a senile American president, Joe Biden," he wrote, adding, "My pain is unbearable. The world must know what is going on in Ukraine with that inhumane dictator Zelensky." As the world's attention shifts from the Western proxy war in Ukraine, Lira Sr. joins the hundreds of thousands of fathers now grieving the deaths of their sons. Unlike most of them, his son did not end on a battlefield, but in a prison for condemning the war that doomed so many to an ignominious fate. I've spoken about this, and I've made posts on X several times where I said, look, no matter how many funds and no matter how much we send to Ukraine, it is not going to work. I said this probably close to a year ago. It's not going to be enough. Russians have no problems sending every last male body they have into this to win, and they have more bodies than Ukraine does. And so it's just going to be a war of attrition, even if both sides were equal. The amount of ammunition and everything that Russia has versus Ukraine is lopsided, and now they're getting to the point. I saw a photo where, I'm not making any commentary on what's right or what's wrong. I'm just saying what I've seen. That a lot of the Ukrainian men that are over there now that are fighting are in their 50s and 60s. I've seen some photos of. There's a video going around of a mentally challenged man fighting for Ukraine. They didn't give him a gun. But he was supposed to, I guess, help hand out ammo, and he looked like he had Down syndrome. Dude. And they didn't even give him a gun. It was in the trenches. This is such a messed up situation. And in the end, I've kind of been against this conflict since the beginning. Not that I'm rooting for Russia or anything like that. I mean, the aggression by Russia is certainly wrong. But you have to know when it's time to sit down to the negotiation table. And there were multiple times that Ukraine wanted to, and President Biden and Boris Johnson were like, "No, we'll give you everything you need to withstand and push back against Russia." And the problem is, they gave them lots of money and lots of ammo and tanks and other things. They just didn't have enough warm bodies. And now that it's kind of fallen out of favor with politics here in the United States, Ukraine's just going to be left to its fate, and they're going to have to sit down and they're going to have to negotiate just like they would have a year ago. The only difference is they've thrown, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian lives away, and because of that, probably several 100,000 Russian lives has been lost as well. And if you want to blame who to blame all those lives lost, I mean, if you want to know who I blame, it's going to be Putin. it's his aggression that caused all this, and because of that, that's why all these men are gone. But we could have at least stopped halfway or partial way, realizing that this was not going to be a situation that was going to be winnable, and they could have at least sat down to the negotiation table hundreds of thousands of men ago. And it's sad that this whole situation has come down to politics. It's come down to what it has. It's just very sad. So, Coach was one of the first guys that I saw and I came across on YouTube with his content into the red pill and manosphere kind of stuff. I didn't always agree with him, but I liked the guy. He was personable. I think he was friendly. We had an interesting conversation, and I think it's a shame that he's gone. I think that I think this whole thing is a shame. We've lost so many good men. Maybe they were bad men too. I don't know, but they just throw bodies into the meat grinder until they get what they want, and I don't like politicians for that, if nothing else, especially for that. So I will leave it there. Guys, I'll have another video out for you shortly. We'll see you in the next one.